which issues that we want to reprimand. And to me, I think that was the whole thing about it. But I was wrong. Regardless, biblically I was wrong. So okay, I mean, I didn't argue with it, but I was upset. I was upset about it, but I didn't argue with it. But it's just a fact. I'm like, man, all this other stuff that go on, nobody says nothing, and it's like they're just waiting. I just feel like sometimes people, when you're successful in something that you're doing, people are just waiting for you to make a mistake to take you down, and that's what I felt like. So
Possibly. Moving on to our next topic. Even when we do have men in church, and we all represent men who are in church, one of the biggest frustrations that I have is women are looking for that traditional guy. They're looking for a man who is, the provider, protector, problem solver, prophet, and priest. They're looking for that Boaz. But what I find in the majority, not even some, but the majority of the women is there is a very clear expectation of what I should be doing as a man. I should be a guy who's doing exactly, what men were doing, 1,000 years ago, providing, protecting, all that stuff. But when it comes down to their roles, even in church, it's a little less clear. She may want to, work on her shea butter company. She's working, 7 hours, 8 hours a day. So she may not want to do her portion of the traditional roles in the family. But I'm still required to do all my roles, washing cars and changing shingles on the roof and raking leaves. And I got to help her with some of the more domestic duties. Statistically, men are doing 3 times as many domestic duties as women, as their grandfathers rather, and twice as many as their fathers. So it seems like we've kind of put ourselves in a situation where even in the church, that maybe there's a feminist kind of energy going on where women want to be liberated and do things, but the men are still required to be the same men that we've always been. And for a lot of guys, it's a bad deal. Um, Help me clean that up, Carlos. And if Carlos is off, Martin, go ahead and jump on that. And DK, want to hear your opinion on that. And is this a reason why so many of these eligible women in the church are looking for men, but even when they find men, these men are ghosting them or whatever for these various reasons? Martin, you got it.
I would agree, unfortunately, that there is definitely a double standard within the church.
Now, hold on now. We know that this is an issue that we hear about our counterparts in the world, the men in the world. Men are looking for traditional, women are looking for traditional men, but they're not traditional women. How has that occurred in the church, in your opinion, Martin? What we do
It's the
wrong?
same reflection. It's the same reflection in the world. The same standards that the woman outside of the church has for the man, and the laundry list of expectations that he needs to have and bring to the relationship. The women in the church are unfortunately taking that same laundry list,
Mm,
are not coming up to their end of the bargain, as we were saying, in regards to not just the domestic things, but if you want a man who's, there's a 6'6" rule, 6 feet, 6 figures, six pack, and
oh
it's like,
man,
this is not my rules.
they want Satan.
This is what I heard, and this is what I've experienced myself. Um, and it's like, okay, so if the man does bring all that, and he does pray, and he does worship God, then what are you bringing to that same equation, right? Are you
Mm,
femininity? Are you bringing beauty? Are you bringing cleanliness? Are you bringing a gentle tone when speaking to the man of the opposite sex, and respect without
mm,
cutting him off, right? And so there's a whole, unfortunately, there needs to be a balance of that equation where it's okay if you have certain demands or the requirements that you want as a woman of God, but then at the same time, you need to then do an introspective looking to see what am I bringing to the table outside of the fact that I'm a woman of God.
hmm. And this is probably the biggest issue in the dating scene. There's so many issues that are compounded, but I think this is the biggest issue dating in general, and somehow, like you said, Martin, is crept into the church. When a good man does find a good woman or a woman in church, you still have to jump over this final hurdle of, is she a woman that expects me to be a 1950s husband, but she wants to be a 2050 woman, you know? Like, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on me to do those things, and I'm not even getting a date, at least not a second one, unless I'm bringing these things to the table. And men should, don't get me wrong, men should be expected to be providers, protectors, problem solvers, etc. But when it comes down to the woman's side of that, it's like that's optional. I can't tell you, and I want you to think about examples that you went through, Martin. DK's not allowed to talk about this, but but I can tell you so many times where I have dated doctors, I have dated lawyers, I have dated all kind of people, all kind of young ladies who are doing very well in life. And what I find is they are not able to do that traditional feminine role. But I have an expectation of still being a traditional man. You know, one girl I was talking to, she ended up getting a promotion, and she was like hitting at 90,000. And we were planning, for the future. And she's like, yeah, I'm making all this money. I'm like, wow. In my naivety back then, I'm like, wow, that's more money you can contribute to the family. And I'm telling you, that girl looked at me like I had six eyes, and she was like, I expect you to pay all the bills. My money is play money. Your money is the money that matters. And that's when I realized that she wants me to be traditional, but that's not a part of her plan. And you couple that with the dating scene. This is a Christian woman, right? And that's okay for her to think like that. But what am I getting out of that role overall? Because she still wasn't the type of person that was doing all the cooking, and she wasn't doing all her domestic stuff. But I'm still required to be the man that men have always been. We're going to throw it to DK. Let's check out this comment real first. Let me see here. Okay. Yes, I feel this big man, though I'm not a big believer on this, where I am a big believer of a man being a provider, protector, problem solver. She put professor. I feel a woman needs to provide back in ways. I don't know about providing financially back in ways, but she needs to provide something from her feminine energy, right? Another comment, such as taking care of the household, she's continuing, such as taking care of the household, kids, and meeting her husband's needs emotionally, physically, etc. But you're finding so much in modern day thinking and even in church culture that this is slavery for a lot of women. DK, do you find that the women that you interact with find that this is slavery for carrying this emotional burden for men? What the same thing your grandmother may have done, 50 years ago?
Oh yeah. So what I'm saying is, listen, if you come across some type of women, that's just you just X them out. There's more women. So I think the problem is that
You just got to get not even acknowledge those women.
yeah.
Because we're
So
raising up women to be men.
so what I'm saying is when you see those when start to date these women and you see what they're it's like okay, that's how you feel. Next.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because that's the way. Because if you continue to cater to this, if you continue to allow this to go on, then they think it's okay. But if enough people tell them no, they be like, okay, maybe I got to change something. But if you taking them out to dinner, dating them, and whining and dining them, and then they're like, hey, but I ain't doing none of that. I ain't doing what I'm supposed to do for you. But hey, you're a good man. Yeah, I am a good man, and you're not gonna have me because you don't want to be a good woman.
mm.
And that's just what has to be done. But as long as you continue how words you use simping for for women for women who don't want to conform to the way that you're looking for a woman, then that's what they're gonna just continue to do it. And that's the bottom line. You know what I mean? You just gotta move on.
Well, I agree with that. I think one of the bigger issues is men and women are not on the same page. They're not on the same page in the world, and they're not on the same page anymore in the church. And I think, like you said before, and that's our moniker for this movement that we have. We just make pizza. And
That's
if
it.
a woman is coming in and she's saying, "Hey, in the dating environment in the church, I need you to, I have this shea butter company, and I need you to support me for that. That's my lifelong dream." Or, I want to pursue the skill of underwater basket weaving. As men, we have to be like, "Hey, I'm just not going to do that. That's not the purpose that God has given me." And humbly tell her, "Hey, I'm only making pizza." And if she's like, "Hey, what about strombolis? That has tomato sauce." Men have to be okay with saying, "No, I'm not going to do that," and just leave these women alone. I do agree with DK. I think a lot of what's happening is men are entertaining a lot of these women. And sometimes they entertain them just because they don't want to tell them that they're not interested, because the men are looking for that attention. I think other times, conversely, men are using women who are not what these men need them to be for sexual purposes, and they'll string these women along. She could be the biggest, Christian feminist in the world. He has no intention of being with her, but you know what? She's probably very sexually active, even in the church. What about that, Martin? Is that been your experience? We know that you do it all right, but you don't do any of those evil things. But what has been your experience with that?
So my experience, I have noticed that, and similar to DK, before I just pull him over to the side, I let him know where I stand, and let him know that I'm not alone. That there are other men that do feel this way and do think this way. And it's
Hmm.
one or two things. So I recently got married, and in the beginning stages of my relationship, when I was courting her, we discussed these topics very thoroughly. There was and she actually has her own. It's not a shea butter business, but she does have her own skincare moisture business.
I hit that on the head. Don't be mad at me, bro.